Ah, hello everybody. It's Mel, and we're back for another recording of Coach's Corner. I'm so excited to have Coach Stacy Rhea back with us. And we're going to be talking about from hips to heels, glute activation for speed and injury prevention. So you may be wondering, what? I need some activation in my glutes? Well, yes, because that's a big muscle that you need to activate. So Stacy, do you mind reintroducing yourself just in case someone's joining us for the first time, and then you could go into your topic?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mel. Thanks for having me. Hi, I'm Coach Stacy. I have a business called Rolling.w.rhea, and my primary focus, in addition to the endurance coaching, is the strength and conditioning. I have a strong background in that, and I've been doing that for like 30 years. I've done everything from half Ironmans to 50Ks to gravel racing, track racing on the Velodrome, mountain biking, a little bit of everything. So definitely like to mix it up. And as Mel said, we're going to be talking about the hips to heels, like glute activation and speed. So I think everybody can relate to this. Most of us sit at a desk during the day. Okay. And what does that mean? That means that our glutes are put to sleep. That means our spines can be a little compressed. So it's called sleeping glute syndrome. And then we get on our bikes. It is a real term.
I love it. No, I was just like, yep, I could totally relate. So I wasn't going to stop you, but I'm just saying, yes, I can relate.
Yes. I'm on my feet most of the day because I'm in the gym working with people. But, and then you think, okay, so you're sitting at your desk all day. You're maybe in the car driving to where you're going to go ride your bike, and you're still sitting. So we have all these things going on, and our glutes aren't active all day. And yeah, you go to the gym and you do some exercises. Maybe you do some squats, or you do some leg press, or some deadlifts, or something along those lines. But really, when we think about the glutes, we're thinking about the whole like posterior chain. But when I focus on the glutes, we're looking at like the hip extensors and the key stabilizers. Glute max, glute medius, and glute minimus, along with hamstrings and a handful of other muscles that I won't name because like nobody knows what they are because they're smaller when we hear about the major muscles. But in all seriousness, we when we need to have a stable pelvis in order to have that power, propulsion, speed, and power on the bike. So what we're looking at is why the glutes matter. As I've started to say, they're our powerhouse. So if we're not activating them properly, they're not being engaged, we're not able to push the power on the pedal or the propulsion off the ground or the kick and whatnot in the pool. So one of the things I like to look at with the athletes when we do this is do the assessment, because we want to see, are you stable? Are you unstable? Where are you stronger? Where are you weaker? What do we need to focus on? It's not just going to the gym and doing those few exercises that I had mentioned. And I'll circle back to some movements for that. But what happens when the glutes aren't active properly? Our smaller muscles come into play. Our lower back becomes weaker, or it's not being utilized properly. Our joints are compensated. Things along those lines. So if you want to be more powerful on the bike, we need to implement these movements to keep the glutes active. I tell you, one of the things that I find interesting, and not always with athletes, but sometimes, is that we'll go through the motion of an exercise, but we're not getting the best return on our investment because we don't know how to activate those muscles. So if you're going through the deadlift and you're not contracting and squeezing the glutes properly to help bring the body up, it's not just about the hamstrings or the lower back. It's about the glutes actually engaging and working properly together. Make sense?
Totally makes sense. Yeah. I mean, they all connect.
They do.
That's the thing. Everything connects, and um, and I think that's why sometimes this is like my brain going on a small tangent here, maybe, or just thought is when you look at a movement somebody's doing, like you said, a deadlift, and you perform it yourself, you may think you're doing it correctly, but you may not be engaging the right muscles or all of the muscles that you're supposed to
Correct.
be engaging. And how important that is, because there's certain exercises for a reason, to increase that strength for the muscles that you want to increase.
Exactly. So when we look at that and we want to utilize and work the stabilizers and the glute muscles, the Romanian deadlift or the stiff-legged deadlift, while those are great, there are other exercises that we can implement that are going to help stabilize. And when we're stabilizing, it is balance, but it's balance under load. It's not just standing there and trying to balance with your leg up, but it's something under load. And so one of the exercises, if you haven't done, is a single Romanian deadlift, where you have one foot on the ground. And, you know, the hip hinge is really important with that. So you've got your foot on the ground, but if you're not hip hinging properly, you're not activating the glutes properly. You're going to feel that more in either the lower back or the quads. So when we do that and we do the individual, we're also working each side at it independently to its best ability. If you have a slightly stronger left side versus the right, you're going to get more activation there by using both of them at the same time. So I like to break things down and do them very much individually. And as we were talking, like not engaging those muscles properly. I just started working with an athlete, more of a cyclist, and she does a lot of like powerlifting and strength and stuff like that. And she, I gave her my strength training program, and she's like, I just can't believe, I had no idea how imbalanced I was.
Yes, yes. That actually made me think about that while you were talking about like that exercise, was the imbalance piece too, because if you're imbalanced, then you're not properly using your muscles, you're not probably sitting on a bike correctly or running correctly or even swimming correctly. Like granted, swimming, you're not upright, but still it doesn't matter. Like you're probably imbalanced in some way.
Right. So if you want to use the swim, if you're kicking and you have a harder right kick, that could create not just, maybe a movement in the water the wrong way, but now that imbalance can actually take your pelvis and tilt it this way. So now if you're tilted this way, you've got muscles that are being pulled on this side this way. And now how do you get that force on the pedals? How do you get that force from the hip in the, for the kick or that propulsion? So these are things when we slow it down and utilize them and utilize the muscles properly, we're getting the best force on the pedals, and we're getting stronger. I like to do a lot of functional movements where we're working the body as a unit so that we are, mimicking that pedal stroke. Some people, I'm not going to say leg extensions are terrible, but they might not be the best movement for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But when you ride your bike, you don't use your quad in isolation. Okay. You're using your pelvis, your core, your hamstrings, your calf. If you see someone riding on the bike and you see them going back and forth like that, there's something going on there. I can't say what it is without doing an assessment, knowing a little bit more about that person, but these are things that we look at when we're designing a program, not only, for strength, but on the bike, individual leg drills where you're doing a smooth pedal stroke. That is not easy to do. And it's not about pushing a lot or being fat. It's a slow, methodical transaction from start to finish so that it's smooth. If you got a sticking point, where you're kind of like, there's a little gap or a little, like a second of lag, that could be an imbalance. So just looking at the body as a whole and working it. I mentioned the single leg exercises. I have a couple other that I wanted to. The Palloff press is about core stabilization. And that's where we're literally just standing in place and moving weight back and forth. But I've got to stabilize that core to be able to make that movement. Or a lot of people are familiar with the farmer's carry. And that's
Yes.
And when you do one side at a time, it's about creating that hip stability under load. So these are little things that make a big difference as we're getting on the bike and as we're running.
Oh yeah. I'm just like, my brain is going through all the exercises that like my PT has given me like over the years, because I'm pretty sure like I do have some, glute weakness, or what did you call it? The sleepy glute syndrome.
Sleeping glute syndrome. I know that sounds funny, but it has been touted as just as bad as like, smoking. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's comparable to smoking, what it's doing to the body. We don't realize, I've had some issues in the past with my lower back, and I know my glutes are not always they weren't firing properly. I've worked on it. Sometimes we can tell by just if we look at ourselves in the mirror and we don't see that nice round glute, whereas it's called the peach by some coaches. These are little things that, aesthetically we see, but they also do make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so focusing on the glutes, one of the things I like to look at with athletes is when we do the breakdown, and weight training is just like, the cycle that we're going, the periodization. When you're in season, it's more about muscle endurance. I'll keep it simple, like muscle endurance. So you're doing different exercises, but it's not just about how much weight you're pushing. Again, it's about how are we activating these muscles in conjunction with everything else we're doing. So, it's, I lost my train of thought. I'll be honest. I apologize.
Oh, you were talking about the seasons, like the different seasons of training, and like the importance of how you're the training like off season, and then I think you're going to go into like before
Yeah,
before season, then season.
yeah. So that's what I was going to say is just like there's periodization for a triathlon season or a cycling season is the same thing for your weight training. And some people probably know that, but what are we supposed to be doing in those primary times? And, when we're using, and it's, each of these muscle groups, but breaking it down again, like I said, just isolating a muscle group that might be good during the off season. But during season, when you're going a little bit lighter with the weights, higher with the reps for muscle endurance. And then we're looking at speed work too. I know you and I were talking a little bit prior, and we were talking about the Velodrome. And I use the Velodrome. I don't do mass start racing. I do time trials when I race. I like to be the only one on the track, so I know I'm safe. And some people, are afraid of the track altogether, but I can tell you it has made a world of difference in my cycling capabilities because of the way I'm using my body and the continuous cycle, and the speed that we're keeping up. So those intervals, it makes a huge difference. And again, it comes down to the glutes and the powerhouse of what we're the propulsion of what we're doing. So,
Um, some people actually may not have ever heard of the Velodrome. They may not know what a Velodrome is or the Cleveland Velodrome. So do you mind just talking about that for maybe like a minute? That way our audience can understand what it is and also what it offers.
yeah, no, that's great. I would love to, because I know some of the local athletes do utilize it and have been out there. So the Velodrome is comparable. It's really considered Olympic style bike racing where you have the banked walls. The Cleveland Velodrome is actually, it's either 24 or 25 of, there's only 24 or 25 in the US alone, and Cleveland has one of them. And what's unique about our track is that it's a 200, I believe it's 266 meters, but the bank walls are 50 degrees. And not all the tracks are like that. So yeah, it can be a little intimidating, but what we do is when you come out, and we've done this for the Cleveland Tri Club where you come out as a group, and we'll take you through what we call Track 101. And we teach you how to get up onto the wall a little bit at a time, because you have to learn how to ride the bikes. And this is where the strength and the power comes in, which is interesting. On a track bike, because you can't use a regular bike, a track bike has no brakes and only one gear. So your legs are your brakes. Okay. So you're learning how to engage those muscles, but the speed and the power you get from going around the wall makes a big difference. On the low end, we're looking at about 12 miles an hour. On the top end, somewhere between 22 and 25 miles an hour. And it's like a vortex. As you're riding, you're kind of leaning the bike one way and the body's another way. But just even going around the track, everyone's like, don't you get dizzy? Don't you get bored? There's so much strategy to what you're doing and how you're riding, because the lines on the wall, there's your sprint line, there's your passing lane, there's when you do pursuits, when you're working with the team where you're coming up and down the wall, you'll see cyclists doing that. So really, if anybody's interested in gaining speed, especially for like an Olympic or a sprint distance race, this is where you'd want to come and do that. I go there just about every Tuesday evening to get my training in. So it's no different than going to the track to do your speed work for running. You know?
Yeah. And like the Velodrome has no idea that we're even talking about this, but it's a great resource, and they still offer a one-on-one class for free. Do they still do that?
Yes, that's free. You just have to register for it, and they'll get you set up with the coach. Sometimes I can do them. Sometimes there's a few other, coaches that are there. And a lot of people, once they try it and they get on the wall, even if you stay on the low end, they love it. But you can rent a bike. So the 101 is free. And then moving forward, if you want to rent a bike, don't quote me on the prices, but it's somewhere around $40 for the rental and the time there. It might be a little less than that. But what's neat about this is you don't just go and ride for an hour. We might do 20, 30, 40 laps just at a casual pace at that lower end so that we can just get warmed up. And then we're doing, where we're working together, where we're pulling up and learning how to draft off of one another. We're going up and down the wall. You don't have to do that at first, but these are things that really help you with the speed. It's just like doing an individual, we were talking about the individual leg drills, but I'm sorry, I kind of jumped around on that one. But yeah, if anybody's is interested in getting to the Velodrome, I know myself and Coach Pam from Stellari rides out there. And I think Nancy does sometimes too, for those folks that know Nancy. So there's a couple of us that utilize the track for the speed work. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Anybody can reach out to me and direct message me if that's something they want to just have a greater understanding on.
Yeah. And like we said, like it's something unique that not many are around. So Cleveland has one, and it's outdoor, which is it's also very unique. So they have a free one-on-one class. Actually, I'm looking at their website. And then, I would say just look at their website. It's clevelandvelodrome.org and see what they have. Even just come out and watch. But like as you're saying, Stacy, like this is, we're trying to make sure that we find ways to activate our glutes to keep them stronger. And sometimes trying something new is a good way to do it, like with the Velodrome. Or as you were mentioning, you have a powerlifter athlete that is utilizing you and didn't realize that there's more exercises that you can have out there to utilize the activation of your glutes, right? So, I mean, there's a lot, and sometimes you just have to find the resources, and that's why we have these coaches' corners conversations.
Right. So something just for everybody to keep in mind. Right now during our season, I'm not doing this, but as we get into the fall, I have access to a garage gym where I can do mini classes or presentations and take people through these exercises. I've done that for one of the other coaches in the area for some of their athletes. And I have one that I'm working with every other week right now, and we go through these exercises. But what I like to be able to do on the off season is when we can spend more time in the gym and really focus on this, because that's where we're going to get our speed and our power. It's not always just being on the bike. It's not always just hill climbing, but also we're looking at injury prevention. So I'll come back to the injury prevention in a second, but so that's something that we can maybe as we get closer to the fall, just talk a little bit more about. But the injury prevention, here's what's interesting is that, if the glutes aren't activating properly or fully, we get hamstring tightness. And a lot of people just think they're not stretching enough. And that's not what it is. It's your glutes. Your glutes aren't strong enough. Other areas are being overcompensated because these aren't working properly. So now we're looking at knee alignment. How is your knee tracking? What was the other one I wanted to make a point on? And I apologize. I'm lost. Lower back, the hamstrings, and the knees and the joints. And that's the other thing with a lot of these individual moves. We're also incorporating, it's not just the strength of that movement, it's also the isometric hold that works the joints and the tendons. We want to keep them strong too. So it's a combination of working from the inside out, or what I call the framework of the body. And then the house muscles would be like the glute max. But then you're looking at like the piriformis and, smaller muscle groups that need to be activated as well. So if you're always working in that sagittal plane, which I talked about the last time when we did this, swimming, biking, and running, we're working in a sagittal plane. We need to work in the transverse plane as well, and then some lateral movements. So these are things that all those muscles are activated. It's not, we don't want to create a muscle imbalance where it's not only you're imbalanced and turning, but you've got those imbalances that are also creating that you can't move properly or your things aren't tracking properly. And the best way to do that is just to have an assessment with a professional. Let them assess you, let them take a look, let them determine where you need to have your focus. It could be the core as well, because the core has a lot to do with that. And I think the next time we're going to talk more about our core stability.
Yes, we are.
How that comes into play, because that's really important. I spent a lot of time, a lot of the exercises I do incorporate the core. So we really don't need to do crunches. I'm not a big fan of crunches. Some people still like them. That's great, but there's a lot of things we can do. So yeah.
Yes, there's definitely a lot of things we can do.
I get excited about it because there's being in the gym. One of my clients told me the other day she couldn't wait to come back because we've done some different and new things that she's never done. She's a newer client. She's like, it's fun because I'm doing different things and I'm seeing how my body's working and operating and where I need to control it and how I can be better. She's getting ready to go to Canada and Banff and do a week's long hiking up there. So we're looking at how we can stabilize her hips and her pelvis and make sure that she's got the strength and the endurance to walk the duration each day for those miles.
And she's going to need strong glutes.
Absolutely. Because when you walk up the steps, you're hitting those glutes and the quads. And it's not just, again, I keep going back to the isolation stuff, which is great, but you want to work the body as a unit.
Yeah.
And the injury prevention is, key for us, especially as we're aging. We need to do certain things to keep our bodies moving, active, and operating properly.
Yeah. I was thinking how you were just mentioning we were so focused going this way. Of course we are, because we were forward momentum. But it just made me think as a lot of people are transitioning from being on the trainer a lot, the bike trainer, to outdoor riding, and how on the trainer you're like this a lot. And some of the fancy trainers, they have a little bit of movement. But once you get outside and you have those crosswinds, headwinds, it's having that having that activation in your glutes to make sure that you aren't maybe being blown to the side, right? Or that you can be in control of that forward momentum and not feel like you're over using, let's say, like your glutes to stay stable as you're moving forward.
Yeah. So to your point, here's a really good example for those of folks that weight lift. If you sit on a chest press machine where you're sitting upright and you're pushing the weight away from you on the machine, it's guiding you through that range of motion, right? Well, that's kind of what the trainer does. But when you take the dumbbells and you lay down on the bench and you're doing a bench press where you're bringing up, a lot of times when people start, they feel like their arms are going like this. And basically, those are your stabilizer muscles, okay? So they're not being used on the machine. So they're not being used on the bike. So it is very different. So you might find that you have some cardiorespiratory fitness, but those muscles that are stabilizing you and balancing you aren't as conditioned, if you will. Yeah. So it's a really good analogy, and it was a good point that you made.
I don't know if we specifically talked about this or not, because you've went over a few exercises, and we've talked about like injury prevention is very important. But let's say someone's listening to this and we don't want to overwhelm them. Correct. But let's say, maybe they're coming into the season and maybe they've done a little bit of strength training, but nothing like crazy. What are like the top 5 exercises that you would recommend for somebody to work on their glutes to hopefully have a successful multi-sport season?
No, that's a really good question. It was one of the things I was going to say is that when we go live with this, I was going to do a little, I'll list out those exercises, but some of the one I like to use the bands. Okay. And the bands, what's nice about them is that you can use them for what's a dynamic warm up, which is prior to any event you want to get warmed up. And it's not just the cardiorespiratory you want to get warmed up, it's the joints and everything. So some of the exercises would be like lying on your side clamshells, okay, or lateral band walks, which I like to put around my feet, not my ankles.
Oh, that's yes.
It is more engaging when it's on your feet. You know
Yes.
that?
Oh, yes. Yes. I don't know. It was like a couple weeks ago, I was in our garage gym and I was like, I'm just going to, do this way. And I was like, oh, that's changing up the game.
It is. I had a client ask me the other day, why do you always do it this way? My other trainer, because they're in Florida, does it this way. And I go, I'm going to show you why. So I had them put it on above their knees. I had them put it on their ankles. And then I had them put them on their feet. And they could feel the difference. And I'm not saying to negate those other two, but most effectively, I have found in working with the band, it's on the feet. And there's, so you're basically doing lateral work and working the legs in a motion. Because our hips, for example, can work in a 360. They can go all around. So working them from side to side. So that would be one. The single leg glute bridge, where you lay on the ground, you bring one leg up in the air and you push through the heel. Not only are you working your calf, your hamstring, your glute, but you're also, it's like balance and coordination in the core as well. So that's another good one to use for glute activation. I have a couple other exercises I do. They're a little bit difficult to explain, but instead of doing like a seated abduction where you push away, okay, I have people stand and I actually teach them how to move their pelvis so that they can activate the glutes and the tendons, and it gives them a totally different feel. But it's hard to, that's an exercise that's harder to explain, but you're literally just moving the pelvis from the hip socket on the opposite leg and twisting. So it engages all those muscles, but it's great for mobility too, which is very much overlooked. And if you don't have a full range of motion for a joint, you're limiting it. You don't have as much power. And that's important too. So I gave you a couple exercises. An individual hip hinge where you're not just doing a deadlift, but you're actually just hinging from the waist. You got one leg that's straight behind you, your back is flat, and you're hinging forward. Well, once you do that, if you hold that for 5 or 10 seconds, the only way to stabilize yourself is really through your glutes. It's not just your leg, it's your glutes and your hips and those tendons. So those are other good ones that can be done too, to activate the glutes.
No, these are all good. Like I was obviously writing them down.
Well, I will send you something that we can share with everybody for some great glute activation exercises that will help. And, if you're already doing them, great. If not, and you don't feel them in the areas that you're supposed to, let's jump on a call. Let me talk you through it or what have you. And just make sure you're doing it properly, because it makes a huge difference on the bike and the run. But I focus a little bit more on the bike, I guess, because that's where we spend most of our time when we're racing. So
yeah. No, that's great. I mean, the whole premise behind Coach's Corner is to give information to participants to have as successful of a race as possible, but also to make sure that they have coaches that they can email when they have questions, right? And most of the coaches in Coach's Corner are located in Northeast Ohio. So, so if someone wanted to be like, I want to see you in person for something, that's why we offer this. And every coach has something different, other like certain specialties. And so that's why, these things are important for us to have, is like building community in all different aspects leading up to race day.
Absolutely. One of the things that, I'm pretty big on, and not all trainers feel this way, but you don't have to work with just one trainer. I'm not talking about coaching. I'm talking about strength training, where, someone might have a specialty in, I'm just trying to think of something arbitrary. Maybe it's more bodybuilding or more Olympic lifting. That's not my area of expertise, but so if you want that, but you want somebody that's a little bit more, that can help you with your mobility and stabilization, that's where I come into play. Because not everybody's versed in all the different areas. It's hard. It's just like I look at it like this, when you go to school, the teacher teaches you English or they teach you math, but they're not teaching you everything. So there's those specialty areas and you can learn from each one. It doesn't mean you have to be with anybody forever, but you work with them for a couple months, extract it, take notes, be engaged, learn, educate yourself, but you're getting it from a reliable source. So I'm always open to answering questions and helping people. It's what I do. And I love it. And people have been there for me. And that's what I love about this community is we're looking to pay it forward and keep everybody strong and racing together. It's a great community.
Oh yeah. Like you said, paying it forward. It's just, I don't know. It just kind of happens like naturally because you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to help you out. Or, oh, thank you for helping me with something. Just because, like you said, everyone's got specialties. And everyone has different resources to give.
Right. Absolutely. So
yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up this session?
Let me just go through my notes real quick to make sure I didn't forget anything.
I will say this is probably a topic that's a little close for home for me because I've had hamstring injuries and I'm still working through one. So I've been through a lot of the different exercises. My PT that I go to, she's great. And I just went to another PT just to get another opinion. And he was like, do you do this? And I was like, yep. And then he was, do this? Yep. This? Yep. And I always felt like I put him at a loss for exercises because I'm already working with somebody who helps me. But I'm human. Things happen with my body, right? I trip and then the hamstring sometimes gets aggravated. So
yes. And I look at it this way too. Let's say, you're going to therapist A and that therapist is great, but you can't get into that therapist. Okay. Where's your plan B? Because when it comes to physical therapy, if it's a major issue, you need to be doing that 3 times a week. You can't do it once a week and expect it to get better. And you need to keep doing this because that injury can come back. A lot of times people take a rest and like, oh, I feel better. And then a couple of weeks later that comes back. You didn't address it. You just let some of the inflammation, come down. So so having the resources and doing that, and it's great. And sometimes physical therapists can only work, I think, from my understanding, they can only work on one thing at a time. So sometimes there's more going on, but
yeah,
that's great that you do that. And there might be something, like you said, even though he may have been at a loss for an exercise, he might explain something to you differently that resonates more. And that's important too, because you're like, oh, light bulb moment, I didn't think about that. Or the way they explain that resonates with me more. I'm going to try this, or it might generate a different question. So
he, after asking me a bunch of questions, he, I think, gave me one or two exercises that I wasn't doing. And I was like, oh, okay. But, it's cool because I already had a good base. He helped me out a little bit. Went from there.
Yeah. And just on a side note, we're talking about strength training. There's a lot of athletes that don't think they need to strength train, but something to keep in mind as we're aging, we're losing muscle mass. And riding a bike is not building muscle. That's muscle endurance. So there's a very big difference in what we're doing, being on the bike versus in the gym. And it's important to have them both. So it's just something to keep in mind if you're not strength training, why you would want to get into that to whatever degree or level you want to. Definitely do that. Definitely get into the strength training.
And strength training doesn't have to be a ton of heavy weights. It could be a lot of band movements with the mobility and light weights. It doesn't have to be anything crazy.
No, especially as you're starting out. But the heavy weights do have their time in the periodization plan. But you're right. If it's heavy all the time, you're overstressing your joints. You're just creating and waiting for an injury to happen. So yeah.
Very Yay. Good. Thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, we're going to have another recording, so stay tuned. And real quick plug here, if you haven't taken a listen, the last episode that Stacy was on was episode number 4. So go back, watch, listen, and then stay tuned for another one.
That sounds great. Thanks, Mel. I appreciate it.
Thank
Have a
you.
good weekend.
You
All
too.
right.